Welcome to NovoEDTalks, where we reveal real-world strategies and expert insights from learning and development professionals. In every episode, we chat with practitioners, course designers, learning strategists, and business leads. We hear about their experiences in the learning industry and predictions for the profession and the trends that they're seeing. But before we get started, a little bit about NovoEd. Founded at Stanford's Social Algorithms Lab in 2012, NovoEd is a people-centric, capability-building platform that combines social and collaborative learning to drive performance readiness at scale. Through cohort-based experiences centered around human interaction, NovoEd taps into collective wisdom, placing each learner at the center of perspective, application, and expertise. Large enterprises such as 3M, GE, Marriott International, and Nestle partner with NovoEd to accelerate their critical initiatives, reconnect teams, and achieve rapid alignment through learning that is felt, experienced, and swiftly transformed into impact. Now, let's meet our guest for today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the NovoEDTalks podcast, a space for training trailblazers to get real. My name is Melissa Fisk, and I'm the producer of the NovoEDTalks podcast. And today I am joined by Zac Coontz, who is a senior manager of training and quality at Zac is a certified Six Sigma Black Belt Senior Manager of Training and Quality with over 6 years of experience in the learning and development field. Currently, Zac leverages expertise in statistical analysis, process improvement methodologies, and data-driven operational solutions to drive operational excellence. With a strong background in data analytics and Power BI, Zac provides meaningful feedback to operations teams, identifying and addressing root causes of performance issues. Zac, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on the NovoEDTalks podcast today. Thank you for joining and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, why don't you start by just kind of introducing yourself a little bit more, talking about your role in your company?
Yeah, so like you said, my name is Zac Coontz. I'm a senior manager of training and quality. A big part of what I oversee, iQor itself, right? We're a BPO company, so it's outsourcing. Lots of call center agents is a lot of what we do. We do other tasks as well for outsourcing as well, but a big focus for us as iQor as a company is really enhancing the use of technology and AI to enhance the customer's experience and for each of those customers. So really, we focus in on that. They give me lots of access to other things as part of my role for training and quality, because we do quality assurance for all of the calls that come through, right? We have all kinds of data on all of what the employees are doing and their performance and lots of different things that we then utilize with our business analytics site, which I also manage for 6 of our programs. And so we run all of those numbers through our business analytics team, build dashboards for people, and kind of really help operations really focus in on just their people. So they don't have to go dig through numbers. They don't have to figure out who's doing what. My analytics team is going through and taking all of that data and feeding it to them. And then the trainers as well are using the data that comes back to be able to enhance the different sessions that they're doing. But it's a big focus for myself in my position.
Wow, that must be a lot of fun for you. Who are some of the learners that you oversee and what challenges do they face?
Yeah, so the majority of it is new hire employees. So a big part for us, we look at from a call center perspective, at least majority of our company is based in the Philippines. We are in 10 other countries as well, but most of the parts that I manage are also in the Philippines. And so most of our new hire employees are typically millennial Gen Z. They're young, usually 18 to 30 years old. And so the biggest challenge we have with learning isn't necessarily so much technology like we would have had previously in the call center industry, but more so keeping their attention. And so we have to really change things up the way that we're presenting information. I believe one of the studies that one of our corporate training people, she likes to cite, is about 5 or 6 years ago, even just before COVID, the average attention span of an adult was like 3 to 5 minutes. Now it's down to like 2. And so like you really have to really focus in on what people are saying to make sure that we're actually keeping their attention and moving through. I also have a manager that reports to me that we handle leadership development. And so his whole thing is he travels all over the country here in the Philippines and meets with all of our supervisors, making sure that they understand and are learning the best way to address employee performance and that it's being addressed in the best way that's going to be implemented. So we do that as well. And then I've been part of a project that I took on was developing my team of business analysts. So making sure that they're not, previously our business analytics teams were mostly just like, we make a report, we send it to you. And so part for me was taking on and teaching them how to actually be analysts. And so we've been teaching them things like Python and Power BI and things like that along the way to make sure that they're more equipped to better present and more efficiently present that information to the operations team.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. And definitely a challenge with the attention span thing. I think we can all relate to that a little bit, but with that
Social
age
media
group,
doesn't help.
yeah, no, but I'm sure with that age group too, like it is forefront of your mind, like you said, having to
Oh,
address
yeah.
that.
Yes.
Now, what are some of your other biggest like workforce development challenges, and how are you approaching all of these challenges?
So I mean, even back to that, a big part of it really is keeping people motivated as well. So again, they are young, and so they're coming in thinking that, okay, I'm going to come in, I'm going to get this job, and I'm going to just be the best, and I'm going to keep improving. And so when that doesn't happen, or they don't get the attention they think they deserve, they leave. They don't stay here. So one of the biggest challenges is maintaining our workforce. So some of the things that have been implemented company-wide, one of the biggest things, we have a new program, just won an award from HR.com called our iLead program. And the whole purpose is learning, not just necessarily just, okay, you need to be better at your job, but what development do you need that might be outside of that? So it includes like personal development as well as their inside of work. So that's helped us a lot. And then we have another called Coach the Coach, which basically allows them to, we started recording all of our coaching sessions that our supervisors do. And so that allows the managers to go through and listen and audit that information. And then we can feed back the actual performance of what they're doing and help them improve. Really for the younger folks though, again, going back to that attention span, some of the ways that we've looked to address that part and make them feel like they're important to us, right? Because they definitely are. That's where the money actually comes from in this industry. So without them, nobody else has a job. So at least with the programs that I've been working with, we've implemented one thing is called concierge. We spell everything with a Q here at iQor. So for some reason we've spelled concierge with a Q, but a big focus for them is 0 to 90 days. And so from day one, they're the ones that meet that employee. They're the ones that do focus group discussions with these employees at 0, 30, 60, and 90 days to check in and see how things are going, what's happening. And then they're a go-between. So if for some reason they feel like they can't approach a supervisor or manager, that person is a lower level person they can go to that then is going to go and be the one that presents that to the higher level people. So it gives them a little bit bigger voice because then they can take, okay, well, I have 5 agents that said this and not just the one person complaining to their supervisor who never voices that to a manager when really it's widespread because they're only hearing the 2 people. So that's really helped us be able to address those challenges and keep them going and being motivated and willing to keep working with us as we develop in our ever-changing industries that we work in.
Yeah, I love that though. I think that's and it probably keeps everyone like genuine and honest, like with their feedback, which sometimes that's like what you don't always get if it's like, well, I know my supervisor is going to see this, so I don't necessarily want to say that. That's awesome. For my next question, as the skill sets, as you've kind of talked about, needed for success continue to shift in everything that's constantly evolving, what strategies does your team use to ensure that the workforce remains adaptable and prepared?
So a big thing for me that I like to implement with all of my training managers is anytime that you're asking someone to learn or do something, it needs to start with you. If you're not willing to do or try to learn that thing, you're not being the example that they need. And so really it's being servant. So if they're trying to work on this skill that I don't have, but I'm not working on it either, if they come to me and ask for help in that development, I can't help them. I've personally have to put in the work and the effort myself, and that goes all the way down to the very bottom, right? The amount of effort that we're putting in or expecting of our people, we have to be willing to do ourselves. And so that's a big thing that I push with my teams, with the managers, supervisors, trainers, all the way down to the lowest ends of my team is you can't expect something from someone unless you're willing to do it as well.
Yeah, that's great advice too, I think, especially for anyone in, a leadership role.
Yes.
How does your team assess and address skills gaps to stay agile in a changing workforce?
Yeah, so a big part, so like I mentioned before, I do training and quality. Typically in the BPO industry, that remains separate. We made conscious decisions in the past 5 to 10 years, they've really started combining those two because the quality analytics team is reviewing all of the calls and actually identifying what those behaviors are. So we have audit forms for processes and everything. So every step of the way throughout the calls that these new employees are handling, we're evaluating their abilities across if it's a sales account, if it's customer service, if it's technical, we're making sure to evaluate that and feed it into one of our tools we have called Scan. That scan tool then provides direct feedback to that agent. They can see it instantly for all the feedback. Their supervisor now has access to that. And then we also export that data into our Power BI dashboards, which then gives them a visual of the trend of that specific behavior. If they're improving, if they're not improving, they can view a longer stretch rather than just reading the feedback and be like, oh, this is consistent. But they can literally just see, is it going up or is it going down? So that's the number one thing. Now, when it comes to leaders, like I mentioned before, we have the coach, which is where we find that as well. So same type of deal. It's recorded. Their coachings are recorded. We keep track of the number of coachings that they're doing per individual. And then they fill out a form and we track their consistency. Is their feedback clear? Are they giving the right direction on this during the coaching session? Are they actually encouraging this agent to improve and giving them the opportunity to learn instead of just saying, do this now? Right? They evaluate all of that, feed it in, and same thing. We feed that into our dashboards and we watch the trends and make sure that everybody's moving in the right direction, that we're improving. And then above that, the senior managers will review the feedback that the managers are providing just to make sure that it's clear and that we're giving the best feedback possible. Really just completing those loops around all the way around.
That's awesome. And I love the visual component of that. I think that can really help folks too. I'm a very visual person. So like seeing like, are we improving on this
Yes.
correct trajectory, I feel like would be very beneficial. Speaking of measuring, how do you currently measure the effectiveness of your programs? You talked about it a little bit, but do you have any kind of core KPIs that you use?
Yeah, so I mean, every program that I manage has different specific KPIs as far as the agent's abilities, right? So our customer service representatives, depending on if it's a sales program, we're going to measure it based off of their ability to either upsell or actually make the sale, close the sales. On some of our healthcare accounts, it's really just, did we complete everything for them? Are they going to call us back? What is their customer feedback? Every program that we have, though, typically the number one thing that we look at is the customer service feedback from the customers. Surveys are always going to be our number one thing. They may not be a revenue driver, which is why, but it is important because those customers aren't going to come back to us if we don't do that. So that's usually the first step. And then usually it comes to whatever our revenue driver is setting the appointments for healthcare, or if it's actually making the sales on the other end. Now, when you move up above that, right, a manager is not necessarily always being held to that. So a lot of the time, the KPI that we're held to the most is the attrition rates. So what is our turnover rate? That's going to be our number one driver. Why are our people leaving? Why are they not? We have surveys for that as well. We have exit surveys that we track reasons for leaving. Just for example, a lot of these stuff that we piloted and have implemented with the accounts I work with, we've driven our attrition to some of the lowest in the company. Our turnover for the year is average of like 3% per month, which in the industry is usually 5 to 7% is usually what we shoot for. And so they've started adjusting our goals to even lower to push us to try and get below 2%, really just because training's where the money comes in. It's just cost on us to have to retrain employees after people leave. It's always expensive in every industry to replace people. So the better we are at not losing people, the better that becomes. And that really feeds into the next step where we develop those people that move into leadership positions, and we try and move people out to other things so that they can be replaced by the people below as well. And that seems to help along the way. But a big driving factor, for my opinion, for our success is the actual attrition rates. Are people staying? Do they want to be here?
Yeah, and what a great, standard of excellence that you all are shooting for. That's phenomenal. Do you have an example of a successful initiative, L&D initiative or mentoring initiative that significantly impacted employee performance and contributed to the overall success of the organization?
Yeah, so I mean, a big thing we started last year as a part of with retail. Okay, so most of the programs I work on are retail and residential services, and so usually the Q4 we double in size. And so in order to reduce the cost of that, we looked at if we hire these people anywhere in the country and we hire them as what we refer to as BYOD, which is bring your own device. They just use their own laptop, install our software, our secure software onto their laptop that doesn't let them access anything else except for that. And then the problem we were running into when we did it originally is the attrition rates of those people was super high. They weren't committed. They didn't want to stay. And a lot of what we found is the reason for that was the tech behind it was being messed up. People didn't know how to fix it. They didn't know what to do. And so we piloted a program this last year. Our attrition was averaging about 30% for our new hires, which is super high for us. Usually we're 90% pass rate, like we only lose 10% at max, and we were losing 30%, which wasn't good. And in order to keep our retail to where we could expand out without having to buy more buildings, more actual physical space, we needed this to be successful. And so they made a big change where my trainers, now previously they would start with recruitment, they would go to HR, then they would have an ops interview, then they would meet with the person for HR for onboarding, and then they would finally meet my trainer. So now what we've done is they still reply with our recruiting team. They have their initial interview with recruiting, but then my trainers do a lot of those first sets of interviews. So they've already met the trainer. They've already talked to this person that's now going to be the one training them. And then they get their assignment. They show up day one. And now instead of HR handling onboarding, we've created an AI Q bot, just question bot that's available for them. And my trainers run the onboarding. And if they have questions that the trainers don't know, we have an AI bot that can then answer those questions for them. But then it just keeps that trainer in the forefront no matter what. And then the next step we took for the BYO, the Bring Your Own Device group, is we ran the trainers through the special tech onboarding. What are the requirements? How do you fix them? How do you address them? And so now from day one, when they show up, they're not having to call into a queue to our tech team to try and fix their device. They're not waiting. The trainer just addresses it. We were able to reduce that 30% to about 18%. So we made a big improvement in that. Still a long way to go. We still want to get it closer to 10. But as we also are improving, our in-office folks only ended up about 5%. So we've improved in both areas, but that was a big part of that, was making sure that they were involved the whole way through. And then that concierge person that's there from day one. They're always a point of contact every step of the way, no matter what's happening from day 0 to day 90.
That's awesome. And that is such a massive, I feel like that can be such a time suck and that like tech issues and such a challenge. So the fact that you can like put the tools in the hands of folks to be able to solve those challenges for people is huge. I love that case study. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's congratulations, huge success. I know you said you're still trying to get down from that 18%, but still that's, great. Speaking of technology, what role does technology play in your programs, and how do you leverage different tools and platforms to enhance learning and mentoring experiences?
So a big part for us, I mentioned our quality analytics team. We actually have a proprietary tool with iQor. It's called Valdi. And so we take all of our calls where our clients have signed up. All right. We have requirements for who can put their calls in and who can't. So anybody that we store their call recordings, we run them through our voice to text software. And then we use AI to analyze the text. And so we can create topic groups for specific things. And so I can say, okay, well, this agent isn't doing very well at this specific sales pitch, at this upsell. I can then go to our software, pull all the calls for that specific agent from the past 6 weeks, and I can just click a button and the AI knows which calls have that thing in it. That then the supervisor can just go in and target that specific behavior instead of having to listen to 30 calls and try and find one where they actually had to do it. So we leverage that a lot. And one of our big announcements we made recently, we actually just signed a contract with OpenAI. So to start using OpenAI inside of this to get better analytics, be able to just ask it questions instead. It's new. We just announced it like 2 weeks ago, I think. And so we're really looking forward to better utilizing that, because then they won't even have to know the topics. They can literally just ask the AI the question and it can create the topics itself on its own. For a while, we were teaching our supervisors how to write the code to be able to ask it questions where, like, if the customer was speaking versus the agent, and it's a little more difficult. And so it's a very specialized skill to have to teach everybody how to do it. But this connection to OpenAI is going to make that a lot easier, because then they don't have to know the specific syntax of the code. They can just say, I want to know when this agent said X, Y, and Z, and it will pull all the calls for us. So we're really looking forward to that.
Wow.
Yeah. But yes, ma'am, that's a big move for us right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what a cool use case of AI. Like, it never ceases to blow my mind that I feel like every day I hear these new ways that people are going to be using AI, and that, I mean, just the time save, and just to make it, because I feel like people will look for that, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm looking for this conversation, blah, 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 I can't find it. And they'll give up and just kind of like, figure out a way around that, versus being able to actually like call something up and be able to do it right then and there. That's amazing.
Yes,
As learning and development and mentoring programs have really rapidly evolved over the past 5 years with COVID and AI and everything in between. What would you say some of the biggest key takeaways are?
I mean, a big thing for me is a lot of these, at least in this industry, right? Everybody's looking at a way to shorten the training timelines. Like I worked on a very large retailer when I first started with iQor, and our training went from 7 days of product training with a 3-day foundation before that. So a full day, 10 days worth of training, 2 full weeks of work weeks, right? And at one point, they condensed it down during COVID to a 2-day training. So we were doing what used to be 10 days in 2. It wasn't super great. So that was super fast. We went from 10 to 7 to 5 to 2 within like 2 months because of COVID. And they just needed people on the phones to be able to speak to people. And it took about 2 weeks worth of classes by the time they realized this isn't going to work. So making sure that we're evaluating and taking those steps slower, I think is the biggest thing for me. Don't just jump straight to, okay, I think we can squeeze it in. If you don't have the learning base, right? Maybe if you had the most intelligent group with 130 plus IQ in there, you could probably do it in 2 days. But you're not going to get that with every single person that walks in the door. And so we've got to be able to make sure that everybody understands and don't rush to get things as quickly as possible. I've noticed a lot of people just, oh, I think we can save X amount of dollars if we reduce by this much time. And then they don't ask the other questions. And so making sure we ask those questions, test it first before making the move is a big thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to apply to so many different things for folks. And I think is really true. It's like, just because we may have been like forced to, speed things up or adapt things, like doesn't mean, and like, maybe made it work, doesn't mean it was like the best way to do that. And maybe we need to like reevaluate that now. So I think that's a great example. Kind of on the flip side of that question, as we prepare for the next 5 years, how is your team using different kind of technologies or other tools to really enhance the employee learning experience?
Yeah, so I think almost 2 years ago now, we created a corporate learning design team. And so we do what we call this basically reimagination, training reimagination for our clients. Typically, our clients are the ones that provide the training materials to us. But we've gone back to them, and some of these clients have been with us for 25 years and they haven't changed the curriculum. It's basically just, this is the process, do it. And so we've been basically pitching to them, okay, well, we can do these things, right? We feel that if we enhance this, even at our cost for some of them, not always, sometimes they volunteer for it and they'll pay the fees to have our design team do it. But sometimes we feel that from our end, if we enhance this training enough, I'm going to keep 20% more of my workforce. So it's worth the investment for us. But a lot of what they're doing is enhancing the virtual space for us. So we migrated a lot of our programs from Zoom when we were doing virtual training over to a program called Lanes.
Okay.
And so it's an AI training program, works more like a classroom. So anytime one of the agents may click off of the page that they're supposed to be on for Lanes, it tells the trainer in the window that this person has clicked somewhere else, a lot like what Adobe would do. Adobe Classroom would do that as well. So it tells them all the specific things. It lets them react. It lets them do all kinds of things. And the best part for us, the most efficient thing is the curriculum's built in. So to the platform itself, we're uploading the entire training curriculum in there. And so there's nothing for the trainer. They don't have to open the next PowerPoint. They're not having to move to a quiz. It's built in. So they literally just start, and the agenda for the day is on the screen as soon as they log in for the day. And then it just goes through automatically each step of the way. The trainer can go backwards if they need to, and it's timed. So they can see the time that's assigned for this task, and they can see the time that it's been running. And so they're able to move through and really keep track of everything. And then they get all of the analytics that comes from the software as well to show the amount of time people spent in the window versus out of the window, who's getting the best scores on the little quizzes that are built in, the most participation as far as speaking time during the activities. We can see all kinds of information about who's participating, who's not. And that allows us to give trainer scores as well for how well they're able to adapt what they also develop, which is our active learning classroom procedures, really to make sure that we're not necessarily lecturing and teaching, but that they're learning it using different functions like a jigsaw activity where they're actually reading it themselves and teaching each other rather than just the trainer doing it. But again, all of it's just built into the software that then can give us that feedback in the end. And it's been very helpful.
Wow, that's awesome. What a cool experience. Zac, the great insights from, takeaways from the past 5 years and how you guys are moving forward too with tech. to kind of close on a positive note, what is the most important lesson that you've learned on your journey that you would tell someone just starting out on theirs?
So I took it up when I took this opportunity with iQor. One of my biggest complaints I had about the company I was working for before, was that there was no opportunity to do anything, right? Basically, they told me from day one, you're coming in, there's all the positions above you are filled. Good luck, basically. And so I didn't like that. I didn't like that attitude. A big part of my takeaway from this journey is if you have people that are giving opportunity, don't be afraid to put in the extra effort that's required to do it. I feel like the biggest way I was able to make the steps as quickly as I started with iQor 6 years ago as a trainer. After about 9 months, I moved to a manager position. I stayed in the manager position for about 3 years, and then for the last 2 years, I've been a senior manager. And a big part for me is just because I went home doesn't mean that I'm not still developing what I need to know, what I need to understand. I'm still responding to emails and chats 3-4 hours after I'm supposed to have been off for the day. There's times where I was in the office in the Philippines. We work at night because we're on US schedule. So there's times that I would not be able to sleep, and I would just come to the office and just brainstorm using the whiteboards in the meeting rooms and things like that on ways that we could improve. I've made sure to invest time and money into myself. The reason why they've given me the business analytics side is because I decided I needed to invest in my own future and teach myself how to do these things. And so I paid for courses and went through them and got certified to be able to do Power BI, to do SQL and all kinds of other things that then helps me better provide information to the operations team, the information we're getting from the trainers and quality analytics. So really a big thing for me is effort. The amount of effort you're going to put in is what you're going to get out. And people see that effort, right? You'll run into leaders that they take credit for the effort you've put into. I never liked that. But not being afraid to speak up when it is something that you've provided. As another thing that's really helped, but really effort's the number one. There's a book that I really like called So Good They Can't Ignore You. For some reason, I'm forgetting the author's name, and I'm very sorry. But it's an excellent book. But basically, it's just you have to be so good that there's nothing they can do about it. They're not going to stop you because you're far beyond the abilities that are required for the job that you're in, and there's no questioning you moving beyond. So really, effort's the number one thing for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And thank you for sharing so much of your own journey, because I think that's very inspiring. iQor is very lucky to have you. You sound like a very dedicated employee, but also I think, especially in this time of like shifting skill sets, like needed to, as long as I feel like you're keep learning, and like keeping up with like following your interests and making sure that you're, learning more about those interests. I think that, that's a good way to kind of future-proof yourself, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Well, Zac, thank you so much for joining us today on the NovoEDTalks podcast. It was an absolute pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much for having me, Melissa.
Awesome. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in once again to the NovoEDTalks podcast.